So I just finished recording an amazing conversation with Ronith, who was on the team that recently confirmed the existence of the Jerdon's cursor. The Jerdon's cursor is a bird that was thought to be extinct for nearly 2 decades, the last sighting being somewhere around 2008. And just a couple of weeks ago, a team set out on an expedition to try and look for the bird in the Lankamalla Hills in Andhra Pradesh, where the bird was last seen. How did they confirm the presence of the bird? What were the methods they used? What were some of the challenges they faced in the field while looking for this bird? And what are the next steps towards conserving the Jerdon's cursor? Let's hear it all from Ronith. But before that, please just take a moment to hit the subscribe button so I can keep bringing more such content and conversations for you. And now, let's dive right in.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Ronith. Thanks for joining us today. For the viewers, Ronith is a senior of mine from school. We went to the same school in Bangalore, a school called Vidyaniketan. He was my senior, but we never really interacted much in school. But we figured later that we have a common interest in wildlife. I think it was after we passed out of school. It was on Instagram. Maybe I posted or he posted some wildlife related thing, and we were like, oh wow, there's a common interest, and we kind of got talking, and then he's been my birding guru ever since. Any bird I need to identify or anything, he's the person I go to. So yeah, Ronit, you can tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Yeah, birding guru is a bit of a stretch. But yeah, Vidyaniketan school, I mean, I don't think I knew a single other wildlife person from there. So it was kind of a refreshing little start after leaving to realize that there's someone else in VNS who was interested in the same field. And I absolutely had no idea because I think we were in completely different circles in VNS as well. We didn't really, yeah, and I didn't know too many of my seniors, juniors, that kind of stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
just to give you a little background about myself, I'm an ecologist by training. I just completed my master's in wildlife biology and conservation from NCBS in Bangalore about last year. And after that, I joined an organization called NCF India, where I worked on eBird data sets and things like that for a while. And now I've sort of transitioned into the wildlife tourism sector where I mostly do
Okay.
birding tourism and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah,
So
my interest
nothing
with
much on the research front right now, I guess.
I do have a lot of publications that I eventually have to put out there, kind of in the works.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm
Okay.
not really like academia focused right now. Yeah, that's
Okay.
there.
It's just like parallelly just running at the same time.
Yes. It's just it has to be. I have to wrap up with
Correct.
it soon, though. It's just like a perpetual thing that goes on and on and on,
Right.
and you never
Exactly.
get
Yeah.
done with it. Yeah, it's one of those
Right.
things. But yeah,
Right.
just been interested with wildlife and birds from I don't know. I can't remember when I was first interested in all of this stuff, but yeah, been a long way. And of course, that's also where my interest for the Jerdon's courser and like actually looking for it has stemmed from. And
Right.
yeah, the expedition was kind of a culmination of many years of interest and effort and research kind of put together. Would have been nice even if we didn't find the bird, but man, it was a crazy feeling to actually be able to run into it
Correct.
especially since it hadn't been seen for the last 20 years and people weren't even sure if it was still around. So
Exactly.
that was kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I remember getting the Salim Ali bird guide when I was very young. I think it was the 13th edition. And I remember
Wow.
reading about the Jordan's curse. It said critically endangered, and then there was a paragraph underneath, and then I think the last line had uh, hasn't been recorded since 1919 something, and I had a vague memory of that, but it just stuck with me that okay, there's a bird that they're not saying it's extinct, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean it may be around but nobody knows. That sounds like a cool thing to go find out. So I always had
Yeah.
that lingering at the back of my head. And I think a couple of weeks ago when I came to know that it's been rediscovered,
Mm-hmm.
I went crazy, and then figured the same evening that you were part of the team. So that really got me excited, and I just wanted to have
Yeah.
this chat with you ASAP.
Yeah. The
And
phrase
yeah.
might still be around, but nobody really knows is kind of a very well represented phrase, at least with our Indian wildlife, because there's so many examples of this. And I think the
Correct.
Jerdon's Corsa kind of embodies how little we know about our wildlife in spaces
Correct.
that haven't really been explored as much as, say, other parts of the country, which have been.
Correct.
So I would say using the word rediscovery to actually describe the finding of the Kosa at different points of time is kind of a slippery slope, because the fact that it existed never really completely disappeared from public memory. But
Exactly.
the actual case of why nobody, at least the public, didn't know of its existence for the longest time before it was rediscovered was because the wildlife and academia circles in India were absolutely not in touch with the local communities in Andhra Pradesh, who actually
That's so
were,
true.
who were aware of the existence of this bird, had local names for the bird, and of course
Correct.
used to hunt and eat this bird from time to time, because they were all like hunting
Yeah.
communities as well.
Yeah.
So I think the person who has to be completely credited for the rediscovery of this bird in the 1980s would be a hunter named Aitana, who actually sent a postcard to
Antenna.
BNHS saying, "I've seen this bird. I
Correct.
know it's here. Please come down and take a look at it," types.
Correct.
So that was an incredible story from start to finish. In
That's
fact,
true.
yeah, if you've also read the recent book that Shashank and everyone wrote about India's rarest birds, you'll
India's
see.
rarest bird. Yeah, on the search
Yeah,
for
yeah.
India's
There's
rarest.
a whole
Yeah, correct.
chapter by Bharat Bhushan about how he came down to Andhra Pradesh and found that Aitana had actually captured a bird and kept it in his house and actually like physically showed it to them in his house. That was how the bird was rediscovered after like hundreds of years. So
Correct.
that's a pretty crazy story from start to finish, and it also goes
Yeah,
to show how little we know about this part of the country, at least in the Eastern Ghats,
correct.
because this bird has a very, very specific kind of habitat type that's not really found outside of the plains running down from the hills in the Eastern Ghats and these plateaus, where you have these really big carissa bushes and other species of bushes that are like kind of that span about 2 meters in length. And
Yeah,
there's absolutely nothing in between. It's this bare, gravelly, rocky kind of ground
correct.
between these patches.
Correct.
So it's a very stunning habitat if you ever get a chance to look at it. And it's so unique and very
Correct.
poorly understood. Like people are clearing it out for agriculture and plantations and all kinds of stuff at a crazy rate. And that's one reason
They're
why the
easily written
course.
off as wastelands, I guess. They're
Yeah, yeah,
just, they're
yeah,
just
absolutely.
to
And
the
and they're
public
also
eye.
very easy to clear to make way for other things like solar
Correct.
panel farms and solar farms and
Correct.
you know.
True.
So it is a very threatened habitat type that people don't really appreciate as much as it should be, because like the kind of wildlife you find there and the ecological community there, if you compare these scrub forests to say agriculture just outside, they're completely different. The set of wildlife you find inside versus outside is so starkly different if you go to these landscapes and
True.
actually manage to notice something like this. It's quite crazy.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. I feel like it's that reinstates how important it is to, involve local communities to, understand local wildlife. That's, I feel like it's such an important thing. And this is the best example of, we're under the assumption that okay, this bird is dwindling, it's coming back. But I mean, like you said, the locals there have no access to what we are saying, and for them it's just always been there. So
Yes, and I think
reinstates
bridging
how
this
important.
gap between what we know about our wildlife and actually like the people on ground who are in touch with this
Right.
wildlife when it
Right.
comes to their day-to-day lives, I think that's one gap we really have to bridge. And if
Right.
after the Jerdon Courser's rediscovery in the 1980s, I think 1986 or something like that, I forget the date. But yeah, so Bharat Bhushan from BNHS actually ended up doing his whole PhD thesis on the bird, right? Where he went
Right.
around to different parts of this habitat in Andhra Pradesh in different districts and sort of interviewed local communities to see if they knew the bird. And he found that the bird has been like he found a bunch of reports that suggest that the bird existed in almost all the places that he searched and asked people. So
Right.
we have a number of confirmed and unconfirmed reports, historical reports at least from the 80s and 90s, because of his work, from a bunch of different districts in a bunch of different around a bunch of different towns in Andhra Pradesh. And I think that was an amazing starting point for the research that we did to set out on our expedition as well, because
Right.
we kind of compared these historic sites with how they look presently and how the habitat has changed over the years to see if
Right.
there is still habitat that exists in these areas that can still have the bird in it. And very
Right.
unfortunately, we found that I would say almost a majority of these places, the scrub forest habitat here has been either completely decimated or degraded to a point where you absolutely can't expect the bird to still be around. But the
Right.
consolation
Right.
is that, I mean, I personally did a lot of digging on satellite view on Google Earth to find a bunch of these places, and I'm sure a
Okay.
bunch of other members of our team did as well. And we kind of
Okay.
collated a bunch of different areas we expected the bird would be in and started,
Right.
planning a trip, kind of route that hit these spots one
Okay.
by one eventually.
So maybe you can start from the beginning of how it all, I mean, how this all panned out and how the five of you got together and
Yeah. It's
tell
it's
us
it's a bit of
everything.
a crazy story. Yeah. So one advantage is that all of us, I think, I'd say all five of us are from kind of slightly different backgrounds. I'd say we have, I mean, apart from the birding part that we're all very good at,
Right.
we also have
Right.
slightly different backgrounds that kind of helped us with the logistics of planning this trip and executing it
Okay.
and things like that.
Okay.
So Harish was the one who kind of brought all of us together, like the main force behind this expedition. So Harish and
Okay.
Adesh, two of the members of our group, are from Bombay. So Harish and
Right.
Adesh have gone back many, many years now. So does Shashank. And
Right.
they kind of flew down from Bombay to start exploring this habitat here in Andhra Pradesh. And this is a kind of something that all of us have been historically interested in and wanted to do for a very long time now, but never got the chance to do. So
Right.
Harish's kind of hobby is knocking down these rare birds that haven't been seen in a very long time, and people don't really know about that kind of stuff.
That
So
sounds like a very cool hobby.
yeah, yeah, he went to Rajasthan, found the Sindh woodpecker in India after a very long time,
Right.
and then went up to
Right.
Ladakh and found the long-billed bush warbler, and then decided Jerdon's
Right.
is next on the list. So they both flew down from Bombay to start searching for the corsair here. And
Right.
I think the few weeks leading up to the actual search for the bird, we had to do a shit ton of homework, though. There's no way around it. And I think that was probably the most important thing we did that helped us like effectively look for the bird, because
Right.
there's a lot of literature that tells us the exact habitat preference that the bird has. That was one very important thing that we needed to know to kind of demarcate good habitat patches and no end up not wasting time searching suboptimal habitat and realizing that the bird can't really be here in the first place, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that was one thing that was very important. And I think collating historical literature was one thing that we spent a lot of time doing, and also comparing it to how these landscapes look today. And we
Okay.
also, after doing that, we kind of realized that some of these places do have quite a bit of habitat remaining where the bird might still be around,
Makes sense.
and kind
Right.
of
Right.
planned a route around it. So
Right.
I was in Rajasthan. I came down a couple of
Okay.
days later with Shashank as well. So we both
Okay.
were in two different parts of Rajasthan. We had to fly down
Okay.
on the 25th and join Harish and Adesh, who had driven up to Andhra Pradesh a couple of days earlier.
This is
So
the 25th of August.
yes, I came down on
Okay.
the 25th of August and we joined them on the 26th morning. But the
Okay.
fascinating part is that I think Harish and Adesh came down to Bangalore on the 23rd, and we'd
Okay.
already kind of done our homework and charted out a route. And one of the first stops that we had was the closest one to Bangalore. So they had uh, naturally. I mean, sorry about this, but I can't really be too specific about the locations. I'm like
Right.
actively
Right.
trying hard to. That's
O-
one thing we haven't really revealed to the public yet.
Okay.
But
That's
yeah,
okay.
this is
Okay.
the first place that we plan to stop at in Andhra Pradesh, which is
Okay.
the closest point to Bangalore. So Harish and Adesh
Okay.
kind of drove up to that place a couple of days before me and Shashank and Pranav joined them 2-3 days
Okay.
later, because me and Shashank were in Rajasthan.
Rajasthan.
So
Right.
I think the first day when they landed there, they kind of did a short recce in the evening. They reached a bit late in the day, did a short recce in the
Okay.
evening, spent a little bit of time at night, and went back. And the next day in the morning was when the actual trip started. So they went around.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they went around, found a good patch which they thought might be suitable for the bird and might be worth searching at night. And then
Right.
when they were searching there around, I think in the afternoon, Harish flushed a couple of birds from under a bush, which he thought might have been the cause. So again, a very
Okay.
yeah, a good sign at least. So they thought they, won't hurt to come back here and search at night, where might
Okay.
get a call, might get to see it. Best case scenario.
Okay.
So they did return back in the evening the same day, just before it got dark. Explored the area
Okay.
again, saw a couple of birds with very weird flight calls, kind of fly by them and things like that. So it started getting very exciting at that point.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this was when Harish had kind of started recording on his phone, kept it with him so that if the bird randomly calls, he'll still have
Right.
have the call
Some
on his phone. Yeah,
correct.
exactly. And I think after a bunch of searching around 10:30 at night, they just heard
Okay.
the birds call from like right next to them. It probably wasn't even
Wow.
like 50 meters away. So that was crazy.
Wow.
That was the confirmed proof that we have currently that the bird still exists there.
Okay. There was a
It
phone
called,
recording
yeah,
that was just
on
going
on
on.
Merlin. Yeah, it was a phone recording that was
Okay.
going on, and it
Okay.
called it called thrice and stopped and never
Okay.
called again that night, even though they tried a bunch of playback and things like that. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's also kind of sad because a lot of these habitat patches aren't really under the protected area network, so they could be cleared for agriculture or anything even tomorrow without anyone batting an eye. So I think
Right.
it's even more critical that we quickly kind of identify these habitat patches and look for the bird and find the bird in these places as fast as we can before all of it is just
Right.
cleared. Because yeah,
Right.
this scrub forest habitat is being lost at like a crazy rate every year. And
Right.
I'm sure the numbers, like compared to maybe historically about 200, 300 years ago, that I wouldn't be surprised if the population of Jerdon's coursers in the country is down to what 5% of what it was
It was,
historically.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy the amount of degradation of this habitat that's happened in the eastern part of the country, and that's also one reason why like it's very alarming, honestly. So
Yeah.
yeah, we came down on the 26th, started searching that
Okay.
night. Yeah.
Okay.
And after we joined them, we spent about 3-4 days. And on
At the same
average,
patch, or you're at this
yeah,
point, are
we
you moving around, or you're at the
at
same
this
patch
point,
now?
so we spent our days trying to kind of find other habitat patches around the area to see
Okay.
if
Okay.
that also might hold the bird. But at night,
Okay.
because we already had a confirmed place when we knew the bird was, we'd kind
This
of go
presence.
there and yeah, try for it
Yeah.
again and again and give it
Okay.
a day of gap in between, because again, it really disturbs the bird because it's not a very big
Correct.
place either. So
Correct.
yeah, we actually on average heard the bird about once per day, and we used to split up into
Okay.
groups. Like since there were about six of us in total, we used to split up into groups of like two each or three each and
Okay.
search different parts of it. And sometimes one of us used to hear it from a corner here and then call
Okay.
everybody else. And we go searching,
Okay.
we'd search that entire area. And somehow I think about 4 or 5 times we've heard it and tried to track it down from its calls and failed
You
miserably.
just
So it's
okay.
just a bird that yeah, it's like a vanishing act. I don't even know how to describe it. It's crazy. Like it called. There was this one time where it was a kind of a very open area. We all
Right.
heard it. I think this is the last night we left. Before we left, we all heard it from
Right.
not too far away. We kind of
Okay.
walk in that direction. Do not make any noise. Try our best to like not flush the bird, not make it like move from that patch. Go up to there,
Right.
search I wouldn't say we searched extremely well, but we searched so much in the around that area for like an hour, and we just didn't
Okay.
find it. So I don't know what's up with that bird. It's just, it's
Okay.
probably an expert at like disappearing, and we were left with
Yeah.
no pictures or no confirmed
And I think
sighting
the
at least.
the landscape, I mean, reveals your presence very easily
Mhm.
when we're approaching the bird due to the gravel and stuff.
Yes. That's actually one very sad part about that landscape,
Right.
because there's a lot of loose gravel that's just strewn around the landscape, and when you walk, it makes a
Right.
lot of noise. And
Correct. Correct.
historically, if you look at the accounts of how Aitana used to look for the bird, he used to have a
Right.
little speaker attached to his chest, where he used to play like a
Correct.
buzzer kind of noise that was at
Right.
the same frequency as your footsteps, so it would completely mask
Right.
a person's footsteps. So the bad thing about that is that you absolutely cannot hear anything that's happening
Hear
around you.
anything else, right?
Yeah,
Right.
but the good thing is that the bird can also not hear your footsteps approaching. So
Seems
with
like
the
a net.
flashlight of about 20 years ago, which isn't really very strong, you just walk around,
Right,
look around with the buzzer, and actually
right,
had a very high success rate with finding the bird. It's quite
right.
crazy how. So we did eventually try to make a buzzer with a bunch of different frog calls that
A frog medley,
in
right?
in
I
the
read
region.
about it. I
Yeah,
wanted to ask
yeah,
you.
it
Yeah.
kind of did a good job of masking our footsteps, and we also tried them on a
Okay,
bunch of yellow wattle lapwings in that area, and we found
okay,
that
okay,
we could approach the birds much more efficiently with the sound of the buzzer and like the absolute deafening calls of the frogs that we had. So it
okay.
actually works, and I feel like we should have started using it much more early on. But our strategy
Mm,
was also that we just wait around and listen for the bird many times to kind of track it down and then try to approach it. So we didn't really
right.
use the buzzer for the initial three,
Okay,
4 days that we were there. We just tried it on the
o-
last day and found out that it
okay,
did work, but we had to unfortunately cut short our trip after that. So that
okay,
was one thing we eventually do have to try using more often while looking for the bird. I don't know when we're going
okay,
to be able to go back to that landscape and actually try searching. But yeah,
okay,
that was quite a roller coaster ride from start to finish. We had like a bunch of very strong torches. Shashank and Harish also had their thermal thermal cameras that we used to kind of
okay.
track birds in the night, where we didn't even have to use torches that kind of disturbed some of these birds.
Right, right. I was gonna say, was this the sole, I mean, method that you devised, or did you all use different? I mean, I read about the soil strip and camera trapping method that they used earlier historically, and
Yeah.
was that something you guys tried, or was it just the recording?
So the thing is, camera trapping is and acoustic monitoring are good passive methods to pick up the presence of these birds over a longer time period. But I think
Okay,
short term physically, there's no alternative to actually physically going around like
right,
with a torch and
right,
searching for these birds. That's one
right.
thing. Because camera traps, of course, as we know, have a very limited range. The bird has to like cross that
Cross
little
that.
path that you've set it up
Yeah,
in front of.
yeah,
There's too many false positives. You actually have to like physically sit and search through thousands of
yeah, yeah.
falsely triggered images. Yeah, I've
Correct.
seen how like back that work. It's kind of back-breaking work, by the way, because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to actually have a good chance of detecting a bird like the corsair,
Right.
even in a patch of about a hectare, you're going to have to put down a lot of camera traps. And it's also a lot
Correct.
of physical effort setting them up, going back
Correct.
every few days to like
And then
retrieve
going and
them,
filtering
looking
out the
through.
images.
Yeah, it's quite crazy.
Yeah.
And I think the NCF's Rare Birds team at Lankamalla Hills is currently looking for the corsair using camera traps. And we also
Okay.
spent some
Okay.
time with there on my previous recce where I tried to look for the corsair in different parts of Andhra Pradesh. So that was
Okay.
another story in itself. That was
Okay.
also the one about the article that I've written on Manga Bay. But yeah,
Right.
that was quite an
Right.
eye-opening experience, which honestly helped us a lot to look for the corsair
Okay.
on the second time around. So yeah, it was
Okay.
crazy.
Also, I guess Jagan sir's advice would have been invaluable to you all. I mean, did you all speak to him before going here?
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely. So, I think the first time before we set out on our expedition, we went through Kadapa and spent some time with Jagan Sir's field team. In fact, spent
okay.
some and
Okay.
spoke to him for a while. I'd been in contact with him even for quite a while before we planned this recce and went out to
Okay.
search for the bird. So, I
Okay.
mean, I think Jagan Sir's probably seen the bird more times than any of us currently alive. So that's
Correct.
pretty
Correct.
crazy. And also
For the viewers, Jagan sir's P.
yeah.
Jagannathan. He's a wildlife biologist.
Mhm.
He's I think he did his PhD thesis on the cursor, the Jerdon's
Mhm.
cursor,
Yeah,
and he extensively researched it in the 2000s. Yeah, so I think he's the man to go to for
yeah.
anything related to the
Late
Jerdon's cursor.
90s and early 2000s. I think Jagansa was
Right,
the last person to do his PhD on the Corsair, but he wasn't the first person to do his PhD on the Corsair because first it was Bharat Bhushan's
Bharat
PhD,
Bhushan.
and
Right.
there's a lesser known PhD that came between both of them. There was a person named Amir Basha who did his thesis on the Corsair,
Okay.
and even
Okay.
his PhD is kind of a treasure trove of information about the Corsair itself. And if you look through
Okay.
his PhD, it's actually It's incredible. Like he has very old black and white film camera pictures of the Jerdon's Corso where it's been
Wow. Okay.
illuminated with a torch. He's probably like right next to it and taking pictures with
Wow.
a film camera that's probably made in like the early 80s. That's pretty
My
crazy.
God.
I mean, you can
My
barely tell
goodness.
from the pictures that it's a Jerdon's Corso, but you can.
You just have to believe
It's
it.
amazing that he used to get that many detections back in the uh, early 90s, early
Yeah,
to mid
exactly.
90s. Because if you
Yeah.
do look through his thesis, I think he, on average, throughout the year, he used to see the bird about 15, 20 times, which is quite crazy in
Wow.
itself. 15, 20
Yeah.
detections every year. And he used to like physically
Wow.
search for the bird a lot. So yeah,
Okay.
if you guys really want to learn a lot more about the bird, you do have to read Amir Basha's thesis and look at those pictures because it's fascinating. Like imagine with
Right.
the modern equipment that we have, including thermals and like amazing torches and things like that, we still weren't able to like
Correct.
run into the bird even once.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's crazy. I feel like the methods to search for this bird have been lost from public memory, and we'll really have to like find an optimum way to start searching for it again before we actually start
Yeah.
encountering these birds. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I actually wanted to ask you what the moment was like when you finally found out that you've just found the bird again, officially at
Mhm.
least. But I guess you weren't around for the first time when you
Yeah, it
finally.
was crazy. But I can tell you about the first time I heard the call of the kosher.
Okay. Yeah. Please.
It was
Yeah. Sure.
like kind of an undescribable experience, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, it probably wasn't as crazy as when they heard it because they didn't know it was around, and that was like the first
Correct.
time they ever heard
Correct.
it. But yeah, since
Correct.
I already knew the bird was around and I heard it, it wasn't as dramatic, but it was still a crazy experience because
Correct.
I
Yeah.
think among the six of us in my group, I was pretty much the unluckiest when it came to hearing the bird because the first few times when Adesh and Harish were around, the first couple of nights, well, they heard it both those nights. So the first night they heard it,
Okay.
it called thrice, and that's the recording that we have, which is proof that the bird exists. And the second
Right.
night, in fact, they got a playback response. So they actually played the tape of
Okay.
the call of the bird, and
Correct.
immediately the
Correct.
bird responded from kind of far away. Apparently, it called four
Okay.
times
Okay.
back in response. That's quite
Okay.
crazy, and that's kind of an
Okay.
even bigger confirmation that it really is
Right.
the corsair, right?
Right.
Because it responded to its own playback.
Correct.
And after
Correct.
that, the night we came back was kind of a dull night. I think none of us really heard the bird on that night, even though we searched quite a bit. And
Okay.
we used to kind of show up at the patch just at dusk before it got dark. We used to
Okay.
have some time to position ourselves, and we'd turn on our recorders that we just leave behind us, and while we walked around,
Right.
so that we'd pick up
Okay.
the calls when if the bird randomly decides to call at any point of the night. And we used to search for
Okay.
quite a while, though. It used to go on till about 10:30, 11:30. Sometimes used to cross 12. I think once we even searched till about 2 a.m.
Oh
And
wow.
we
Okay.
also some nights we used to we do it in bouts where we'd start at around 7, end around 10,
Okay.
10:30, go back, get some sleep, come back around like
Okay.
2:30, 3 a.m. and continue searching till dawn. So
Is
it
that
was
still a
quite
good
crazy.
time though for the bird? What is
Yeah.
the peak activity time for
So
the corsair?
apparently, I mean, at least from the literature we know, it's most vocal around dusk. So apparently,
Correct.
um, the kind of sequence of if you actually look at the landscape as it transitions from day to night, um,
Right.
at around 6:45 when it's kind of getting a
Right.
little dark, your
Dark. Yeah.
nightjars are the first ones to start calling. Your Indian nightjars, like all of the place,
True.
to start at once around
Yeah.
6:45, and that's the peak of their activity for about 15-20 minutes after that. And the Indian
Okay.
nightjar calls don't really completely die, but they kind of reduce after a while, and then your Indian thick maize you hear after that. And
Correct.
apparently, the Jerdon's courser kind of calls after these two, a little
Okay.
later into the night is what the literature
Okay.
says, say about
Okay.
7:30, 8 o'clock. And most of the
Okay.
calls that we picked up on the days we were seems to be around that sweet spot of about 9 to 11, I would say. 8:30
Okay.
to 11 perhaps. So it
Okay.
does call
Okay.
quite late into the night, unlike a few
Got
other
it.
birds, like the
But
nightjars.
but never beyond midnight. Did
So
you
we
ever get a
never
call
heard
again?
it beyond midnight, but I'm sure it calls throughout the night sporadically.
Okay.
But if I had
Okay.
to say, at least from our own experience in that landscape, it seems to be more vocal in that window just after
That
dark
time
till
period.
about 11 o'clock, I suppose. And after that, the
Got it.
activity probably dies down because the temperature is a bit lower. And maybe that's the
Right.
time they spend foraging more than calling, right? So,
Right.
and after
Right.
that, again, the same thing happens just before daybreak, apparently. So it's a little more
Okay.
vocal before it gets completely bright in the day. And that's the same
Okay.
kind of pattern you also notice with the nightjars and the thickneys because they suddenly
Right.
become
True.
much more vocal before daybreak as
Vocal
well.
again.
So
Yeah.
these
Correct.
this dawn dusk seems to be a very important activity period for all these nocturnal birds, and
Right.
I don't see any reason why it's the same for the corsair, even though it might be slightly later at dusk, it's slightly earlier at dawn. Yeah, those are
Right.
two time periods that we really have to keep your ears out
Okay.
and hearing
Okay.
for the bird. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did you speak to a lot of locals there, and what is their view on this whole the bird? Did they
Yeah,
have some memory of it? Did they see it?
since we didn't have too much time to spend in the landscape to actually start looking for people who knew about the Corsa, we actually
Okay.
got the contact of a hunter who kind of agreed to speak to us initially, but then refused to speak to us because a lot of them
Oh,
are kind of skeptical about people going into the
correct.
landscapes and don't know
Correct.
the language, and they might
Correct.
think we're from the forest department and might be a bit scared
Correct.
to speak to us
Yeah.
since hunting is technically illegal, even though their
True.
communities
Yeah.
have been doing it for much longer than the rules
Right.
were in place, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, that's one thing. People might be a little skeptical to speak to us
Speak
directly,
up and
and
yeah.
we also had someone who knew the language well, who was from that region as well to kind of assist us with these surveys. And we did ask a
Telugu,
lot of
right?
people. So we did
Okay.
ask a lot of people who didn't really seem to have too much of a clue about the bird. But I think the one
Okay.
community, the people that we really need to be focusing on would be the local hunters. They're the people who are
Correct.
most familiar with the bird, I would say. I don't think
Right.
farmers and cattle herders in that landscape have any idea the bird exists, which is kind of interesting.
And
So
they'd probably see the bird that you show them and probably associate it to be a yellow-wattled lapwing or a
yeah, it's also
thickney.
hard to kind
And
of tell whether they actually know the bird that you're talking about or whether they're
correct.
kind of assuming it's
Correct.
something else that's similar but
Right.
not quite the same bird, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
again, we had designed a questionnaire that kind of uses the process of elimination to kind of make sure that they actually
That's
know
what they're
what they're
talking about.
talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we didn't really get to practice it on the field and actually use all of it because the
Okay.
hunter that we were supposed to speak to didn't really speak to us eventually. But this is something we
Okay.
absolutely have to do on a very large scale across Andhra Pradesh. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of good results just by asking people if they've seen the bird. And
Correct.
by people,
Yeah.
I mean specifically hunters. If we can,
Locals and hunters. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I was curious to know what the sentiment was like amongst the birding community and the scientific community on the bird's existence overall. Like, was it a, we're pretty sure it's around, but I mean, how do we confirm it now? Or was it like, I mean, it's probably gone now. This time it's probably gone.
So, to give you a little context about just before we recorded the bird, I think everyone just, I mean, at least people who have worked closely with the bird and things like that, who know a lot about it, were pretty sure it's still around, and just that people weren't looking for it over the larger landscape. So I can tell
Okay.
you, ISER in Tirupati has an entire program that kind of focuses at putting down these acoustic recorders to detect the calls of the Jerdon's corsair. But even they've
Okay.
been generally limited to these scrub forest habitats that are slightly degraded around like Tirupati, around the campus itself,
Right.
even though they have done
Okay.
it in Lankamalla Wildlife Sanctuary for a while. And now
Okay.
they seem to be limited to that Tirupati landscape where I'm pretty skeptical about the bird's existence because all of that scrub forest is quite degraded.
Degraded.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
most of the scrub forest that remains over there seems a little too dense for the bird. It needs a little,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
more sparse kind of habitat that you find in.
Got it. Yeah.
And also, of course, the camera trapping work that's happening in Lankamalla Wildlife Sanctuary for a very long time. But they just haven't picked up any signs of the bird since I think 2008 was when Jagan sir heard the bird last. And
The last time, yeah.
2009, someone claims to have seen or heard the bird. But since then,
Right.
I don't think any of the camera traps or any of the audio recorders have picked
Okay.
up any evidence, like conclusive evidence at least,
Conclusion. Yeah.
of the birds actually remaining in Lankamalla Wildlife Sanctuary. And it's also
Okay.
interesting because I think the general landscape inside the wildlife sanctuary doesn't seem to have changed much. Like the habitat
Okay.
is pretty much intact, but
Okay.
there's just some reason why the birds seem to have vanished from there, and no one really knows why.
Hmm.
It might be because, like around the edge of the boundary of the reserve, there have been a lot more citrus farms that have come up. The habitat is
Okay.
completely different outside, basically. So a bird
Okay.
that exists in that wildlife sanctuary probably only has to remain inside the very sharp boundaries of the wildlife sanctuary, because
Right.
outside it's
Right.
a completely different habitat. There's Prosopis juliflora, which is an invasive plant that taken over
Correct.
massive parts of it. There's
Correct.
plantations, things like that. Villages also like right at the boundary. So inside the reserve, though, there is still quite a bit of habitat, and it's
Right.
also a little trickier to search for the bird in that landscape because unlike the places we search for it, there's also the threat of I think a good population of sloth bears. Apparently, there's a tiger
Right.
around there. Yeah, so it's a
Oh,
little
really?
trick. Yeah, apparently there's a tiger
Okay.
around there, is what we've heard.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a
But
little
is it even
challenging.
tiger habitat?
Oh, yeah, that so basically the hills, so that wildlife sanctuary is massive, and the actual scrub forest that you find the Jerdon's Corso in is only around
It's
the
on the
edges and the
fringes.
periphery. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And the rest of the
Correct.
wildlife
Right. Right.
sanctuary is just like regular trees and forest and
Got it.
proper,
Dense forest.
slightly
Okay.
denser
Okay.
forest of the Eastern Ghats, where
Got
you
it.
most certainly won't find the Corso, but that's good
Okay.
habitat for everything else, like it's proper forest.
Right.
And yeah, it's massive. So I'm sure that there's probably maybe even more than one tiger around that area. But
Okay.
but yeah, it's just a bit of a logistical challenge to search. And
Okay.
collaborating with the forest department is, of course, the way to go. I think currently because of the risk of entering there after dark, people aren't even allowed to go search there after dark. So I don't think
Okay.
no one's actually like physically trying to search for the bird there, but I'm
Right.
sure to find the bird to actually speed up our chances of locating the bird, I think there's really no alternative to actually physically going and searching for the bird, of
Going
course.
search. Yeah.
And we
So
do have to take. Mhm.
this patch that you found the bird in was within the wildlife sanctuary boundaries, or
We
was it?
kind of checked the land records of that area, and it looks like the
Okay.
patch that we found the bird in is pretty much outside the protected area
Okay.
network. There's a few,
Okay.
I think, the small patches of random reserve forest, state forest, and everything around that
Right.
general landscape. But the place we found it doesn't seem to be under any of that currently, at least
Okay.
according to our knowledge. But of course,
Okay.
no one knows
But
how
did you
up to
still have
date
to go
these.
through some permissions and stuff like that?
Oh, not really. We just went directly and
Okay.
physically searched for the bird because technically it's
Okay.
not really in any protected
Correct.
area.
Protected area.
So
Okay.
yeah, but the way forward would certainly be collaborating with the department and looking for it
Got
in a much wider kind of landscape in many different areas
Right.
at least. Because
Right.
we ended up finding the bird in the very first place we went to, but of course we had
Correct.
plans of checking out multiple different places, right?
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that many of these places still do have the bird, and we just haven't gone and checked. So yeah, a
Okay.
statewide survey is pending, and that absolutely has to be done. Yeah,
Okay.
before a lot of more of the scrub habitat is lost out to just agricultural
Right.
expanse and solar farms and hundreds of other things that they're being converted into, at least as of now.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that it was prime sloth bear habitat. So what
Yeah.
were some of the precautions you took? I mean, if in case you encountered one,
Oh
if
yeah,
you
like all
found
of
yourself
us
in a
are
situation.
pretty. I think sloth bears are the one animal you have to be very petrified about in that region.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, even
Yeah.
an animal like a leopard, we're not really scared of because they do mind their
Correct.
distance, right? Leopards
Correct.
almost never attack people; they just keep their distance, run
Correct.
away. But for some
Yeah.
reason, sloth bears, because of their poor eyesight and their kind of tendency to lash out, because some people sometimes don't realize that they're right next to you, and then you walk next to them
Yeah.
and they kind of get
Yeah.
alarmed. Yeah, all of that
Yeah.
happens. Way too often you hear of people getting mauled by sloth bears. They have like
Yeah.
claws that are like this big. It's crazy. So we just prayed we'd never run into a sloth bear there. And the place we were in seems a little too open for them. So it was kind of
Um,
But yeah, we did have pepper spray on us in case things went south. In fact, we were more scared of people than sloth bears in that area because we had no idea who comes in and goes out of this place at
Yeah,
night. So
yeah.
yeah, we did all of us kept pepper spray on us at all times in case
Okay,
something
okay.
something happened. And so that's one thing that we all have to keep in mind first, right? Because it's
Correct.
always safety first and then looking for the bird without the lingering thought of about you being in danger the entire time out of your mind. You can also kind
Correct.
of search for the bird more effectively. So
Yeah,
yeah,
true,
just take
true.
care of your
Yeah.
safety. Go there in relatively larger groups. You can't do this
Focus
as
all
an
your energies in
individual
finding the.
or like a couple of people. Because I've tried doing me and my friend Munish, who went to a the initial recce went as a parent to these places, and it was very scary. Like if it's just the two of
Okay.
you in a place like that in the middle of nowhere, you
Mm.
don't know who goes in and out, you don't know what kind of animals are there. It is kind of risky and kind of scary.
Right.
Even though you're not
Right.
officially breaking any rules, I'd still
Correct.
suggest, yeah, involving the department and things like that, of
Right.
course.
Right. Also, I wanted to ask you what the next steps to conserve this bird is, and since the habitat is so poorly understood,
Oh, yes.
I mean, I think it plays a huge role in conserving this bird as
Mhm.
as the first step to conserve this habitat.
Yep.
So, what's the way forward, and how do
Yeah.
we go about conservation?
I think, first of all, understanding its habitat itself would be the most important thing we could do. And now that we do have a decent understanding of what kind of landscape and what kind of habitat and microhabitat this bird occupies, I think the best thing we can do is just leave large patches of these scrub forests completely unattended. Just don't try to modify it in any way. We've seen historically that we kind of tend to like garden these habitats into landscapes that we have an imagination of how they're supposed to look historically.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think in a lot of places, and even Lankamalla has kind of fallen victim to this, is that people start digging a lot of trenches to trap water so that there's more trees in that landscape. We also dig a
Okay,
number of,
this is
yeah,
not
people have,
suitable for them.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
got it.
We also dug a number of water holes inside there, thinking it might be good for the Jerdon's courser. But if you actually look at the kind of habitat that they require, there's absolutely no trees, almost no trees in this landscape. So
Right,
artificial tree planting and clearing large patches of scrub forest to plant eucalyptus and things like that are very detrimental to the bird and happen on a
correct.
massive scale even now. And it's kind of shocking, honestly, because all this bird needs is to be left alone, right? We don't have to go and modify that habitat to make it better for the bird in any way because it's
Right,
already evolved to be perfectly suited to a habitat like that
for this
historically.
habitat. Right.
Yeah, so we don't have to go around digging trenches, planting trees, and things like that. And all we have to do is just safeguard this scrub forest habitat, and the bird is surely going to persist
Okay,
for the long run. And I'm sure that the Jerdon's courser might even outlive birds like the lesser florican and great Indian bustard if we take the right measures. Because yeah, this is
okay.
one landscape that there is still a bit of hope left, and there's probably a really good population out there that's just waiting to be discovered, right, in many different
Discovered. Okay.
patches. And it's a bird that doesn't move, it doesn't migrate. As long as its habitat exists, the bird will still be around. So yeah,
Right, right.
that's one good thing about the Jerdon's courser and
Okay,
its life history. It doesn't really require too big of a landscape, at least from what we found out, because the place we found it in is probably a 4 square kilometer patch, and there's at least a pair of birds there. And if
okay.
it's in a patch like this, it's going to be in multiple other patches across different parts of Andhra Pradesh, just waiting to be unearthed, right?
But what are
That's
the
something.
steps if, I
Mhm.
mean, if we need to unearth this bird from, like you said, from multiple locations,
Yep.
what, I mean, how do we go about it? Is it just through birding communities, or is the department doing something? Are there NGOs doing something towards this? Or if somebody watching this would like to contribute to
Mhm.
this, how could they go about it?
Well, I think on ground surveys currently are the most important thing that we have to do, because as
Okay,
soon as I think good birders, solid birders, a kind of community of birders step in to kind of take the initiative to find it in as many places as possible, then the
right.
scientific community can, of course, step in and try to use passive
Support
methods
that.
to kind of do
Right,
something further, like a population estimation and things like that, right?
right,
But for
right.
that, using passive methods to actually find if a bird exists in a landscape might be a massive waste of time, because you could put down
Okay.
camera traps in a location for more than a year and not pick up anything, and you still
Right.
won't be completely sure whether the bird exists in that area or not,
Existing.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
physical surveys are probably, I mean, one decent night of searching with a torch is probably equivalent to about a month of camera trapping, I would say,
Right.
because you're
Right.
actually
Right.
moving around, you can look over a wider area, and of course you can pick
Right.
up calls at the same time, right? So
Right.
there
Right.
is absolutely no alternative to people going out and searching these patches and listening for the bird, of course. And after people have found it in multiple different patches, we can again
Right.
start to actually monitor these birds using more
Okay.
passive methods, perhaps.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
is the way forward, at least what I think would be the best way forward and the quickest way forward to avoid these habitats being lost as quickly as they are currently. And I
Okay.
think we absolutely have to start looking a lot harder for this bird in a lot more regions where people just
Okay.
haven't looked historically. But the bird is
Okay.
surely still around. Like there's so many places.
Right. Right. But does this finding of yours, has it already started to, improve the resource allocation towards this project,
Um,
or
I would say it's a
is that
little too early to
far off
comment
too?
on that. It also depends on a bunch of people taking this initiative and taking it forward and actually trying to
Okay.
start to physically search for it. But we are seeing
Right.
very good signs, of course. The forest department
Okay.
seems very excited about, initiating this and starting the
Okay.
search for it, of course. And of course, there was a lot of news around the rediscovery. People are very
Correct.
excited, and we do have that momentum now more than ever to actually go
Exactly.
and start searching for it on a larger scale,
Larger
right?
scale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
make sure this momentum doesn't really die out again like it did the last time it was
Yeah.
rediscovered and
Yeah.
visited. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was one that we do have to stay on top of things, and we do have to keep pressing people to in power to sort of
Right.
take these decisions, make it easier for people to go out and search for it. And there's really no lack of money that would flow into a project like this, because there's so many people just willing to fund searches for the Jerdon's cause. It's such a charismatic bird, not just
Correct.
nationally but internationally. There's like thousands of people who would want to come down and see a bird like this, right?
Correct.
And yeah, there's certainly no lack of money that can be poured into projects like this to search for it on a massive scale across Andhra Pradesh, and
Right.
maybe even in the neighboring states where there is some habitat that's left where the bird might still exist. So
Right.
yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
critical period in time, I would say. 20, I mean, now's the best time to actually start going out and searching for the
Exactly.
bird, because a lot of this, I mean, even we saw signs of that habitat being ready, kind of getting ready to be completely cleared out and things like that. And if we were
Mm.
late, that place would have been converted into
Mm.
agriculture or like housing or something on those
Mm.
lines. So yeah, it's a very critical that we do it as quickly as possible, because we certainly are running out of time for this bird, and a lot of it
Correct.
has already been lost, irreparably
So,
lost.
yeah, I hope this finding
Mhm.
really, creates that momentum that you were talking about, and
Absolutely.
I hope we don't have to wait another 20 years before something picks up again.
Yeah, and I
And
and
have
I
that.
think and I'm kind of hopeful that it will. Of course, we
Yeah.
didn't manage to actually finally photograph the bird. I think a picture would have like really riled up the general
Yeah.
public
Yeah.
even more. But I'm quite
Yeah.
hopeful
But it's
eventually
a
in
start.
the near
It's a
future.
start.
In the near future,
Yeah.
we will have pictures. We will prove beyond doubt that the German Corsair is not extinct yet, and people are actually going to start taking it seriously. So yeah,
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm
Yeah.
hoping for. That's one positive impact that I want to leave at least. So yeah,
For sure. I think it's
hopefully.
already begun. That's
Yes,
already
it's
begun,
already
and I think,
begun, and I hope we
yeah,
can take it forward as well.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So, Ronit, thank you so much. I think that's about it. I really had a great conversation. It's
Hmm.
great listening to you. I hope you had fun too. Uh, how do I put it?
Hmm.
It's a huge achievement in the story, in India's conservation story. I just hope it converts into something more meaningful, and
Yep.
there are efforts targeted towards this bird, and what it signifies in those habitats.
Hmm.
I hope the future looks good for this
Yeah.
bird
Thank you so
and for our
much.
open
Yeah.
scrub forests.
I
Yeah,
really hope so too. I hope people start taking notice of this really beautiful habitat. I feel like I hope a lot more people actually go out there and like get the chance to look at this habitat, of course, because it's
Correct.
so amazing in itself. And yeah, I just like
Correct.
to say,
It's not your typical forest that you imagine. When you
absolutely.
say a forest, you don't imagine it to be something like this,
Uh-huh.
but it's so critical to so many species. And I think, yeah, it's a
Absolutely, it is. I
very,
wish I had
very
pictures to display here, but it's really a beautiful landscape, and everyone has to go see it for once in their lifetime at least.
yeah.
It's an amazing landscape. Now, also, I have to say, like, amazing job on the channel. I've been following your content for quite a while now, and I must say, all of your content is like so well researched. I can't pick out any mistakes in any of them, and it's all like so well done. It really
Thank,
shows that you've done such a great job of doing the research behind everything that you put out. And yeah, it's grown
thank you. Thanks so much.
so well, so organically in the past couple of months that I've been watching. So excited to see where it goes in the future as well. Like,
Thank you
really
so
great
much, Ron.
job.
No,
You
the whole
hit it out of the
purpose of the
park.
channel is to somehow create some impact with around wildlife, because it's so close to my heart.
Absolutely,
So
yeah. And I must say, you've like whacked it out of the park because it's amazing. And I feel like a
thank
lot
you
of
so much.
people are drawing inspiration from that as well. So it's a great start, and I'm sure it's gonna grow into something like really amazing. So yeah,
Thank you so much.
congrats on
Thank
that
you
as
so
well.
much.
And yeah,
Thank you so
and
much.
this is a great conversation as well. Hoping to see it up in some time.
Cheers. We'll be up on our YouTube channel soon.
Oh, perfect then.
Thank you so much, Ronith, for your time. It was lovely having you on our channel for this very interesting conversation. To our viewers, if you'd like to hear more such conversations and have any particular guests you'd like to see on the channel or any topics that you'd like for me to discuss, let me know in the comments below and I'll try my best to bring them for you. Until next time, see you.